Hey, my name's Rusty Korhonen and I've got a story for you. Back in the 80s, my family took a trip to Finland. I had just finished my first year at the University of Wisconsin and I was a distance runner, but I was injured most of my freshman year. So I was just starting to increase my mileage and it was really important to me to get in a good long run because I knew the flight to Finland was not going to be a short one. So I went out for a run, went out on my favorite trails behind the house, and I came out on this, where this trail forked, which was right next to this fairly large house. The parents and the kids and the dog were out in the front yard. This was the only dog I didn't know on that particular route. When he came running to me, I got down on a knee and I put out my hand so he could smell it and was getting ready to greet the dog, and something made me stand up. This is a big dog. I think he weighed about 130 pounds or so. He came right for me. His ears were back, his teeth were bared. At the last minute, he turned his head and went right for my neck. Well, somehow I had gotten my arm in his mouth and I was able to keep him from biting my neck, but he was so heavy, he pushed me back. There was a coiled up barbed wire fence next to this pile of brush. If he hadn't, he would have had me on the ground and I would have been done for. The family was from South Korea and had moved to America. They were absolutely petrified of all the crime they heard about in America. They got a retired police dog to protect the family. And this dog was doing his job. The owner came running up and got himself between me and the dog. The dog listened to him, but kept coming around him for another bite. Well, he successfully pushed the dog into the garage and brought me into their kitchen. I had bite marks all up and down my arm. I was pretty chewed up. He patted me on the shoulder and he says, I will pay for a new arm. Something hurt on my backside and I reached back and I pulled my hand up and it was covered with blood because I had backed up into this barbed wire fence. He got really concerned and I assured him, I said, I'm gonna be fine. My father's a doctor. I'm heading home. I will come back, I promise. So he nodded and agreed. I ran home. It was a good 2 miles. My dad says, what happened? I said, well, I was just attacked by a dog. He said, let's go. So we went right to the med center. I was sitting next to this little girl, about 4 years old, just as cute as a button. She had a little Band-Aid on her ear and she looks at my arm and she says, what happened to you? I said, I got bit by a dog, and she brightened up a little bit. She said, I got bit by a puppy too. Right here, my puppy's name is Buffy. What's your dog's name? And I said, you know, I didn't stop to ask. They gave me a tetanus shot, which wasn't too bad, but they cleaned out all of my shoulder with this really coarse plastic sponge, and then they cleaned my backside. I didn't need any stitches, but that was, I think, the most painful part of the whole thing. My father asked for an invoice, and when we left the med center, we went right to the family's house where I'd been attacked. At the very minimum, the dog had to be quarantined for at least 5 days to check for rabies. As it turns out, the dog was perfectly healthy. So fast forward a bit, we flew to Finland. I had to get up a number of times because my backside hurt so much from the getting cut by the barbed wire. We landed safely in Helsinki and got a ride to our hotel. My sister and I were sharing a room, and of course my parents were in another room. So we went to bed and I woke up feeling pretty rested. I opened the curtains and it's daylight out. I decided to go for a run. There was a beautiful place to run. It was this stone path that led out from the hotel. We were staying in what was the Olympic Village for the 1952 Olympics. Well, I followed this path that kind of went around everything, and one of the things I really like about the Helsinki architecture, or the design, I should say, the design of all the buildings, they're not all close together. The buildings are far enough apart. There's trails, and it seems a lot more relaxed. I found this path and wandered around and went under this overpass in towards the country, and I came around this bend and it went into the woods, and I was feeling great. I love running trails. I love being in the woods. I came up over this little knoll and there's this animal sitting next to the trail, and I couldn't identify it. Now, this is when I realized I might have a problem. I just was gripped by this fear. Like, what is that animal? It was huge. It looked like a rabbit, but I have never seen a rabbit this big. This thing was huge. I tell you, it came up past my knee. I thought for sure I was hallucinating or dreaming or something. I felt like I was in an Alice in Wonderland movie. I kind of shook it off and said, come on, man, just get a grip, just move forward. So I took a step and this thing didn't move. And then I thought of the scene of the killer rabbit in the Monty Python's Holy Grail. And I just started laughing, just saying, okay, this is how preposterous it really is. If this is a rabbit, it's just a rabbit. So I took a few more steps and and it finally did run into the woods. And now that looking back, it did kind of look a little evil. I finished the run. I came back to the hotel. I found the hotel sauna. They had a really nice sauna in there, and they had a cold pool. I love that. I went probably 3 or 4 rounds of heat and 3 or 4 rounds in the cold pool. I was feeling fantastic. So I wake up my sister, get her going, knock on the door, get my parents going. I think I'd probably been up about 3 hours at that point. So we went down and had breakfast. A beautiful buffet. They had everything. They had Karjalan piirakas, they had pula, they had blueberry soup, and they had herring. Oh, did they have herring? Fantastic. I asked my dad, I said, hey, when I was out running, I saw something that really looked like a rabbit, but it's the biggest rabbit I've ever seen. This thing was enormous. And I explained it to him, and he lit up like a Christmas tree. He said, oh my gosh, that was a snowshoe. I used to hunt those all the time with your grandpa when I was a kid. They're fast, they're big. I said, well, this one looked kind of evil. It had fur kind of chunking off of it. He said, well, it's summertime. They're losing their winter coat. I said, oh, okay. That makes sense. But my dad finally looked at his watch and said, you know, it's only 6 o'clock in the morning. I said, oh, really? I've been up for about 3 hours. I said, it's like daylight out there. I mean, it almost feels like noon. He said, Rusty, this is the land of the midnight sun. That's why they told you to close your shades. The point is, I did get a grip on my fear of dogs. I still can tell a German Shepherd bark from any other bark. A friend of mine practiced the German Shepherd bark, and he had it down to a T. Well, we were running as a pack, and he came up and he kind of grabbed me on the side and started barking like that German Shepherd, and I just took off. I mean, I was gone. All my buddies were laughing, saying, you know, we should find a way to do that in a race. You were flying. The one thing I did learn seeing this snowshoe rabbit is that, and I think this helped me get over my fear, was that not everything is out to eat you. Hey, if you like that story, and I've earned it, please hit the like button below. And if you want to see more of this content, hit the subscribe button. I try to post a video a week, and I've got a lot more stories to come. Thanks so much for listening. Take care.